All right, guys, we are live for the Honda Classic. This one's going to be a pretty interesting slate already. I'm pretty excited for the showdown slates for round one and round two. Got those loaded up pretty good. But overall, this is going to be an interesting one. Just looking at kind of some potential pivot plays more so here this week than, more than other weeks. And that's kind of going to be part of the focus for this video today. And then also I'll be touching on FanDuel and Yahoo plays as well as always. There is some edge there as well. And if you are thinking about fading some of the chalk, some of the plays that we should be on, you could potentially play some of those guys on FanDuel or on Yahoo instead and get your ownership that way. So we'll touch on that in this video. But first, I want to get into some questions right away. These are some of the questions that were asked this week. I'll touch on these first, and then I'll get back into the DraftKings side of it. Just touch on some plays. So one question I got this week was, what's the difference between cash and GPP plays? And, for your golf, it's a little bit different. And this is probably something I should touch on a little bit more. Each week we get new subscribers here. It's probably been, a few months since I touched on this last. So for me, my approach to PGA DFS is a little bit different from NBA or NFL, and it's a little bit different from everyone else that does it too. So my whole approach is to make my player pool and make my picks around players getting across the cut line. So I always that's my main focus, is getting players across the cut line. And so when I say someone's a cash play, that means they're highly likely to make the cut. If they're a GPP play, that means they're not likely to make the cut. But the reason I like them is because if they do make the cut, they have some more upside. And my player pool always mimics that. So if I say a guy is a core play, that means they have a high likelihood to make the cut, but they're also going to return their value at their salary. And so that's kind of how I break my player pool down. It goes core, high exposure, mid exposure, low exposure, and then I either mix in the value if it's a value week where there's a ton of value plays, or I go with the high tier if there's a ton of high tier plays. And then I just kind of get the exposures for that week. So just to recap that, typically if a guy's in my core, he's going to be in my cash. That's pretty simple. Your cash lineup should always be your best lineup, because in theory, you're building your cash lineup to get 6 for 6 across the cut line, and that's typically going to be your best lineup on average. Now, yes, you play GPPs to try to capture that upside, trying to play some of those less predictable players that maybe if they make the cut, they're going to go out and do well. So I think that kind of answered that. Hopefully it did. If you guys still have questions on that, feel free to ask that. Pivot plays. So pivot plays, I will touch on that here in just a second. It's pretty much just going to be that 9K range. There's a ton of great plays. Some are better than others, but some do make sense to pivot potentially. And then I do want to talk about the DFS Open. I will be leaving for Florida tomorrow, and then I'll be playing in the DFS Open on Saturday and Friday. Just a couple of questions for you guys. One, I guess, would you want me to live stream the round at all? I don't know if that'd be fun content or not. I don't know. It'd be kind of cool to see, I think. But, if not many people are going to care for that, then I won't do it. And then kind of just the second thing is, do you want me to go out and talk to any other DFS, content providers? I think that'd be cool to give a Q&A to some of those guys as well. If there's anyone, that you think I could do a meetup with or whatnot, I could do that as well. But we got some more questions coming out. I'll get to those right now. All right, so Shank or Palmer in cash? Yeah, so Shank and cash for me. I love his course history. His recent form's pretty solid. Could be a little bit better. He's a better stat fit as well. Palmer's kind of been hit or miss, especially at this course as well. So Palmer's much higher price as well. So yeah, I like Shank a lot more this week. I guess maybe that's a FanDuel question. I'm not sure. English for cash. So English for cash I do like quite a bit. In all honesty, he's my favorite play on the board. It's tough not to like him at all this week. Pretty decent recent form. That's kind of the only question mark, but he's at a great price point, especially compared to the rest of the field. Great course history. He's already shown the upside, and he's one of the best stat fits in the field, so I really like him as a play. Do you think golfers who play well at Bermuda Championship tend to play well at this course? I'd have to go back and check the Bermuda Championship. There's no real reason to use a comp course for this one. We have enough course history to go off of here, And the players that are in this field, we have enough like recent form to go off of as well. So we don't really need to look at any, comp course history. I'd have to look into that more in depth. I can't give you like a good answer to go off of, but there's no reason to be looking at a comp course. Just look at course history here. Look at those guys that are kind of just plotters, kind of play smart golf, are not going to make too many mistakes, and that's who you'll know who to play essentially. Two main core plays for Yahoo. I'll get into that in just a second once we get to the Yahoo picks there, Grizz. But real quick, let's go over kind of that 9K range that I was touching about. So pretty much it's going to be, obviously, a lot of people like Justin Rose this week as a pivot from Ricky and Gary Woodland. I really don't see the point in doing that. I like Ricky and Gary Woodland a lot more. That'd not be a pivot play for me this week. Obviously, Justin Rose, world-class player. He can go out and win this tournament and no one would blink an eye. I just don't like that route. And then a little bit lower, we got Victor Hovland, Sungjae Im, Billy Horschel, Shane Lowry, and then Daniel Berger. So those 5 players right there, you can make a case for any one of them to be like your favorite play, to be your starting point for most of your builds. Victor Hovland, he's the best stat fit out of all those players there. The only worry about Victor Hovland is he's coming off of that win. Now, I'm not actually that worried about Victor Hovland as a guy that's going to go out and not perform well after a win. I don't know, that just doesn't seem like him. Maybe I'm wrong there. And I do want to mention, so I've been seeing a lot of player comparisons for Victor Hovland, and I tweeted this out. To me, it's Matt Kuchar. Just his style of play is just so like Matt Kuchar. Very consistent as well. Good ball striker, good total putter, doesn't make that many bogeys, and their faces both get pink in the cheeks. I don't know. It's just that's just kind of what I see. If Victor Hovland in 20 years looks like Matt Kuchar, no one's going to be shocked. But anyways, getting back to the point here, you could go with him. Victor Hovland would be a fine play. Sungjae Im is kind of the play that I get a lot. He only had a T51 finish here last year. His recent form has been sure a little spotty with that one missed cut with that bogey on the last hole, and I think he was a horrible putter that week. He's been around T30. Other than that, he's a really solid stat fit. He's the top 20 in my model ranking, so I definitely like him as a play. The only problem with him is you got Billy Horschel there, who's just a better play this week than Sungjae Im. Better course history, better recent form, and not a better stat fit, slightly worse, very slightly worse. And it kind of matters as to what you are factoring in this week. You could kind of make a case, depending on what stats you're pulling in, to make a case between Billy Horschel and then Sungjae Im. And then after that, you got Shane Lowry, who Shane Lowry I did not like at the start of the week. Then I started diving into it a little bit more. I'm like, this dude has to be a pivot play from Billy Horschel or from Sungjae Im. And then Daniel Berger, I really like as a play this week. The only worry with Daniel Berger is I was looking at his tee time, and he's the only player in the player pool that I'm kind of worried about his tee time split. So he's got the late round 1 tee time, and then he's got the early round 2 tee time. And why that kind of worries me is because his early round 2 scoring is below half of the field this week. And it's like 50 on the PGA Tour. But his overall round 2 scoring is not bad at all, so maybe those were just a couple of outlier weeks. I didn't look at the actual tournaments that he struggled in for that early round 2 tee times. It could have just been harder events, or the weather could have been poor. Heck, it was probably the Houston Open when he shot like a 76 for one of those. So I'm not too worried about that, but if he does miss the cut, that's going to be the stat point that I go back to and say, okay, that makes sense. So if you want to fade him for that reason and go up to Shane Lowry, that'd be the only thing I do. That would be the only reason I do it for. Daniel Berger, through and through, is just a better play, though, than those guys. More predictability to it, and that goes back to how I make my core and how I make my cash plays and how I make my cash build. It's all about predictability. It's all about finding the players that are going to get you 6 for 6 across the cut line, most likely. It's all about that long-term success, especially for cash. Going a little bit lower here. The 8K range is horrible. I don't like the 8K range. 7K range is pretty loaded. The player I want to play a lot, but I don't know if I'm going to, is going to be Russell Knox. And you guys know how much I played Russell Knox this year, and I thought I was going to be done with it. And then this event came up where bogey avoidance is key, greens and regulations is key, and you want a guy that can strike the ball pretty well, put it where he wants to. And that's exactly Russell Knox. So I do like him quite a bit this week. I'm just struggling to find ways to play him because there's Matthew Naismith, Harry Higgs, Doc Redman, Jim Furyk, all at the low 7K range. And obviously, you've played multiple players down there. You can load up on more studs at the top end. And then you guys have any more questions coming in, feel free to fire those off as well. Kind of going through these plays a little bit quicker on the DraftKings side. Can get into the FanDuel side here shortly as well. So the one area I'm kind of struggling with the most is actually going to be with Harry Higgs, Matthew Naismith, Doc Redman, and Jim Furyk, just because they're all the same stat fits essentially. They're all in okay form except for Jim Furyk, but Jim Furyk has the course experience here. And the biggest issue with that is you don't want to overload on those guys too much, because you can make a lineup with all four of those and then pay up for more studs, but then you're just leaving your lineup with a poor likelihood to get 6 for 6 across the cut line, and that's pretty much my worry there. All right, so Grizz has a question about Westwood. I just don't like him as a play this week at all. Just across the board, stat-fit-wise, I don't know. I'm not seeing it with him. I do expect him to make the cut. I just don't want him. I don't think he's going to return value. We got a question on Brian Harman here as well. So Brian Harman's interesting. I do expect him to. His recent form's been pretty solid recently. He's been making a ton of cuts. I think it's 9 out of 6. I don't have it pulled up off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's that. 6 straight made cuts. He's a top 20 stat fit as well. The only worry is his course history has been kind of okay. I mean, it's been miscut, T33, T48, and then a miscut. His ball striking hasn't exactly been there as well. His greens and regulation isn't great as well. But his scrambling's there. So if he is missing the greens, he can at least scramble really well. He's top 10 in that. And he's top 30 in bogey avoidance, which if you told me a guy was missing the greens and striking the ball as poorly as Harman has so far this year, T30 is pretty incredible actually for bogey avoidance. So I do like him as a play, and I do like that price point of him as well. The problem with it, again, is that you got Harry Higgs there, Naismith there. I just like those plays a little bit better stat fit wise, and you could also just pay up, try to get Shank, try to get Knox in there as well. But I definitely ended up on him a little bit this week. I even toyed around the idea with playing him in cash. I kind of went away from that just because of the ball striking essentially, and the greens and regulation is a little bit worried. Do I like Seifert or Scott Brown as a cheap value play? Let me find those ones. So off the top of my head, no, those guys didn't stick out to me. And they weren't in like my others receiving votes this week where I cut them off the player pool at the end. Yeah, so Seifert, his stats are just, I don't see it with him this week. It just shouldn't be a course that he plays well at, essentially. He's a bad stat fit and he doesn't have course experience here, so I just can't find a reason to play him. Scott Brown, let's see. I think he actually did catch my eye for a second. Let me try to find him here. Oh, that's right. So, yeah, Scott Brown, he does have good course experience here. Obviously, 4 straight made cuts here. The thing with Scott Brown is, and kind of all these value plays, is none of them are lock and loads this week. And in a course where it's pretty challenging, I don't want to load up on too many value plays. Some other weeks you can get away with it because it's a little bit easier to predict. These value plays, they're down here for a reason. And for the most part, it's because their game isn't consistent enough. And so these plays that are down here this low, all it takes is like 1 or 2 bad shots for them to just be out of the tournament. If you want to go with Scott Brown, I'm not going to talk you out of it. I would have pause on Seifert, though. Thoughts on Stewart in small percent of cash lineups? So that's kind of an interesting question. So for the most part, you should really only have one cash lineup for cash contests, and that should be your main lineup essentially for the week. Unless you just want to pivot, kind of hedge, then you should make like one small hedge lineup for cash as well. I don't know if I need to elaborate on that more, I can, just because that should be your best lineup each and every week. So if you just have a main focus for your lineup, your cash lineup, which should be your main lineup, you're going to get 6 for 6 across the cut line. You're going to get 5 out of 6 across the cut line more frequently doing it that way instead of trying to make all these, small different builds. Yes, that's great for GPPs, but for cash, you should have just one main build that you're entering into a bunch of contests, essentially. But Stewart, yeah, I like him as a GPP play. I like him in, the 10% ownership GPP play, depending on, how many lineups you're submitting. If you're submitting 10, yeah, sure, throw him in like 1 or 2 builds. Don't mind him as a play. He's a good stat fit. He was really solid early on in the year. That's a play I don't mind. Okay. Yeah, if you can elaborate that more, please do. But yeah, I don't mind him as a value play. You can definitely go that route. I already tweeted this out and put in the write-up, the free write-up. I really like Tim Wilkinson as a value play this week. Just a solid stat fit. He's been in pretty good recent form. 6 out of 7 cuts made on the year or in a row. He doesn't make that many bogeys. He's a solid greens and regulation player. That's kind of a risk I'm willing to take at his price point, and that's kind of the key, is at his price point. Charles Schwartzel. So Schwartzel did catch my eye a little bit on Yahoo there, Grizz. Here, I'll get into the Yahoo plays real quick. All right, so he did catch my eye at $24, and I definitely get that play for $24 there. But I like Matthew Naismith a little bit more, just better stat fit. I think Daniel Berger, I got that wrong. Daniel Berger, let's just change that right now. I believe he was 34. All right. So, yeah. Matthew Naismith and Shank are the 2 plays I really like on Yahoo, given their price points, given their likelihood to make the cut and return the value at those price points. I think Shank would be the one I like the most at that price point. And then for $20, Cameron Davis is going to be an okay GPP play. There's also Tim Wilkinson down there that I like as well. And then Billy Horschel and Daniel Berger. So if you guys did want to pivot off of those guys on DraftKings, this is where you should be playing them. And that kind of should be the main reason that you pivot from them on DraftKings, is that you're just getting your ownership to them on Yahoo. The price down significantly on Yahoo, and if you play those guys, you're freeing up a lot of space for you on Yahoo to make a really effective lineup. Oh, okay. So yeah, I've seen those different websites there. So you're playing on an Australian site So it's essentially FanDuel last year. You can play 4 studs essentially in the 9K range, and then rock bottom Stewart. So yeah, I definitely get that then. So this is an event where I do think 5 out of 6 or 4 out of 6 is going to be the norm across the cut line. So if you can pretty much lock in 5 cuts and then just play an okay value play like Stewart, yeah, definitely go ahead and do that. I think that he'll be right around the cut line. It's going to be close for him. But I definitely like that strategy there for that site. And, I'd have to see the site a little bit more to give a better breakdown of that, to see how many lineups typically get 5 out of 6, 6 out of 6, or 4 out of 6 across the cut line on there. But that is a good strategy this week for that one. And then get into the FanDuel plays here. So FanDuel is a little bit interesting. Oh, Doc Redman, I messed up his spelling too. Oh, no. All right, we got that corrected. So Doc Redman, I do like him as a price play on FanDuel, 7.9. He's a really solid stat fit. He's pretty much I don't know. He's a value play that I would go with the most on FanDuel if I could, just because I like that price point. And if he does go off, and I typically play GPP lineups on FanDuel and Yahoo, and if he does play well, he's obviously good stat fit. He's going to go out and have a good week. Wilkinson, if you have to go cheaper, once again, I do like him as a play. And then Cameron Tringale. So Tringale is going to be a showdown round 1 play for me. He's one of the better early round 1 scorers in the field. So I'm going to play him a little bit there. And then if I'm going to play him, I'm going to play him on FanDuel as well. 8.3K, that's pretty cheap for him. Adam Shank I do like as well on FanDuel. As you guys can see, I'm getting a lot of my ownership to him on some different sites. And then Jonathan Vegas at 9.1K. I just like that price point for him on FanDuel, especially if you're trying to do more studs and duds lineups. That's a nice little lineup filler for you at 9.1K. He does have the upside to go off, and he has been a little bit better as of recently. Who do you like as a first round leader? So betting wise, this is probably the easy one. It'd be Ricky, honestly. He's one of the better early first-round scorers. If it's not him, I would go with Billy Horschel. I like those two quite a bit. And then let me pull up some information for that so I can answer that question a little bit better. Give me a few seconds. It's going to be interesting this week. One, I'm flying out tomorrow to go to Florida, and then I'll be watching the tournament on Saturday there at the event. But also, we got those early lineup locks now. The tournament's starting a lot earlier. Depends on where you're at. I'm in the Midwest, so Central. By the time I wake up tomorrow, those lineups are going to be going most likely. And I like that a lot more. I like waking up to lineup lock and kind of seeing the percentages and seeing how your early players are doing. All right, I got the information pulled up. Oh, yeah. So I don't have that much of Victor Hovland, but I would do him there as well. I wouldn't mind Cameron Tringale, and then actually Joaquin Neiman and Matthew Naismith. So Neiman I don't have any on DraftKings, but he's one of those rare plays where if you want to bet on him or play him, that'd be the way that I would do is a bet like that. But I really don't like first-round leader bets. I can't bet where I'm at, but I do look at it occasionally. I would much rather just do like top 20 bets throughout the whole tournament. You're just going to win. It's less money, but you're going to win money more frequently. So that's kind of my thought process there. All right, guys. So if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to get off here shortly. Probably in the next 5 minutes or so. I got to pack and clean the house here, which sucks. So speaking of which, I am shipping my clubs, and I don't know if my driver's going to fit in the case. So I might just be playing with my 5-wood the whole weekend, which would suck, but whatever. So just to give you guys a couple more value plays that I am looking at this week. One is DJ Trahan, decent stat fit. I don't mind him as a play this week. Cameron Piercy, priced right by Scott Brown there. Don't mind that as a play. These are all guys that I don't see like making the cut, but if they do, I think they're going to have a strong finish, like a top 30, top 20 finish. And then there was one more slightly lower. Robbie Shelton, he is such a deep flyer play. He's top 50 in total driving and ball striking and greens and regulation. But that's it. That's all he has going for him. But at 6.3K, if you're really convinced on a lineup with everyone else there and you're stuck right around there below 6.4K, that'd probably be the play that I go with. All right, and as always, before I get out, just want to touch on the membership page. It is $10 a month. Been really solid pretty much this whole 2020 season. I touched on the last video. 92% of our plays from the core to the mid-tier made the cut for the Puerto Rico Open. Average finish for that on the WGC was 216, so that was really solid. So can I take off the head covers for them? I'm like, will that mess it up? Because I thought about that too. But I'm a little bit worried about taking the head cover off. Oh, just the head itself, unscrew it. That's not a bad idea. That is a pro tip. I really like that idea. I might have to. That is smart. I think I'll do that. I like that. Thank you for that pro tip. That is good. Around 40 on Yahoo, who would be my core play? I'm going with Ricky and Gary a lot on Yahoo. I forget what their exact price points are. But yeah. I like that pro tip. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'm going to have to use that one. That's good. All right, so we're getting out of here from the live stream. If you guys know of anyone you want me to kind of get a hold of at the DFS Open, maybe make some content with them while I'm there, put that in the comment section below. If you guys want me to do a live stream for, an hour, 30 minutes while we're at the event, I think I'll do that. But, if you guys want me to do that, let me know as well. Put that in the comment section below. But we're out. Please give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.